Yeah, basically. Theism is naturalism, yeah.
Okay, what's your position?
Yeah, I think. Hold on. So I think theism is a more sufficient way to explain the origins of the universe.
What?
It's more sufficient essentially than
What does that mean?
naturalism. Well, what do you define as sufficient?
Well, you're the appraiser. I'm asking what you mean.
I mean, as in, like, it's a more valid thing than saying that okay,
Well, now we're in more
everything in the universe is
confusion. What do you
exists
mean by
by.
valid?
I mean, that is like, let's consider it as analytically can be the case, or more
Well,
justified,
I'm
I
not
think.
concerned with analytics.
Okay, so
But you said
I,
more
I
justified though?
okay, so essentially, I'll just say like how about this? I'll just say that I think I'm more probably justified to believe that theism is like, what holds the accounts of like the universe and stuff. So what about that?
By
This is
justification, do you just mean good reason?
yeah,
So
I'd say
is
much
that to say
more
that
reason. Yeah.
theists have sorry. Is that to say that like theists have better reason than naturalists?
Yeah, sure. I guess
Okay.
so. Yeah.
What supports that?
Yeah. So you want me to get out the argument, right? Hold up. So
Sure.
yeah, okay. Please don't cut me off. Right? We could like take turns arguing. I'm completely fine with that.
I didn't even hear what you said. What?
Yeah, I'm saying like I hope you like don't cut me off and like when we like argue and stuff or whatever.
I mean, typically, that would be expected.
Okay.
And no, he's just basically saying that theism is like it has. I guess that theism has that there's good reason or better reason to believe in theism than naturalism, which is like a crazy take. But I don't know. I guess he's getting an argument.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
My bad, bro. I'm saying. Hold
I
up.
fucking hate McDonald's. That's okay. Honestly, if you just want to tell me in words, you can. What's like P1?
I'll just like spam this. I already have it anyway. So yeah, like I'm gonna give out my arguments. Just don't cut me off, or like when I just like give out your
No, I
rebuttal,
can
so
read
you're
it.
like yeah, your confusion afterwards after I finish. So yeah, P1 there are two modes of existence, either necessities or contingencies. P2 universe relies on its essential properties to exist, that being all knowledge, all power, its very existence. You can deem knowledge as some form of like linkage towards conceptions or mental ideations or other mental phenomena, etc., etc. And hold up, so all power you can consider as like dependent upon the nature or like physicality, where things such as gravity, etc., where there are some forces, etc. Yeah, you can consider that as in like something that is a necessity to exist towards our universe. I mean, since we all have all these things, that's the thing that it relies on essential property. Without gravitational forces or other powers or whatever the fuck, the universe would like kind of collapse and stuff or whatever the hell. Yeah, so its very existence obviously is going to rely on its very existence essential properties, which we can be connotated towards omnipresence, etc., etc. P3 universe R requires property Y for it to exist as a whole. Yeah, so universe R, which would require the property of Y, which is the essential properties in this case to exist. I mean, that's the definition of essential properties in a sense. P4, classical theism, contains all omni properties, all power, all knowing, all good. And P5, X constitutes property Y for sufficient explained phenomenon, in which Y is a necessity for R. So as we can see here, if X constitutes property Y, which is where X contains all properties, basically all yeah, we could consider as these attributes within our eternal universe, then X constitutes for property Y, and property Y for sufficient explained phenomenon, it would require a divine being, which would be X in this case. And so it would require a divine being, which is X, would be a more sufficient phenomenon than other the fact if you're going to say it's naturalism, that you're going to claim that all these things that is existential, that regardless of a divine entity or whatever, it's just going to claim that, well, we're just gonna follow upon the laws of nature or whatever. It's not gonna be a sufficient way. It's not gonna explain your position. It's not gonna support the fact that there are credence towards that. The classical theism pertains towards the divine creator, which requires all these abstract conceptions or other attributes the eternal universe have. It requires an extrinsic metaphysical being. So since P5 constitutes property Y for sufficient explained phenomenon, conclusion R is contingent upon X, which makes X a necessity and R a contingency, and R would be the universe, X would be the classical theistic gods via the linkage or like the arguments I presented. yes, its R is contingent upon X, which makes X a
Oh my
necessity. Then
god,
X obviously, then obviously, yeah, X would be
bro,
necessity for in this case. So I would
Axiom,
believe
that's
it's
not
more. Wait.
Axiom.
Chill, chill, chill,
No,
chill,
no,
chill,
he's
chill, chill.
deafened. He's deafened. He's deafened. He's on
Yeah,
deafened right now.
yeah. Listen, I don't really care. At least the here's my argument, so I'm gonna continue
No,
anyways.
no.
So yeah,
Archie is gonna read it himself. I don't think he really cares if you whatever you ramble about right now.
I don't really care to be honest. So
Okay.
yeah, if it also yeah, so which makes X a necessity, and I would be claiming that it's more gonna be supported upon my standpoint instead. Like if I were to say that more propositionally justified and stuff, and I were to say that
Oh, he's done?
yeah
No, he's not.
yeah yeah, I'm not done yet, bro. So but anyways, we
Just let
can
me know when
just
you're done. I'll be deafened.
um okay, sure. So, yeah, if you're gonna find a contradiction to my position, I don't really think that's gonna work here. Because if it were the case that if all contingencies within the universe requires a divine creator, it will be more propositionally justified. My proposition is gonna be more justified than the fact that you're gonna claim that it's more justified for naturalism, which isn't the case. So it's still not saying it's a necessitation claim. It's still some form of like a proposition that is more deemed to be justifiable and more deemed to be more accurate, which analytically would be distinct to a position that he holds from naturalism. So yeah, tell him I'm done, and then he can give a yeah, we can like start discussing it. Yeah, so yeah, tell him I'm done, bro. Archie, I'm done. I'm done. Wait, who muted Archie? Oh wait, no, not that wasn't Archie. That was Paris.
Wonderful, you're done. So, why should I accept P2?
What do you mean? Oh, hold on. Let me get back to that then. So, yeah, you said that P2 relies on. Well, I mean, why should you accept P2? I mean, that let's say that okay, that in the universe we have laws, as in like mental ideations or mental phenomena that we can linkage towards knowledge, and well, without knowledge, essentially we have like no holds to those said information or whatsoever. And power, you can define it
So,
as
I don't know
essentially like
what you mean when you say that. Like, I didn't understand any of that.
um obviously like there are mental phenomena within our universe, correct? There are abstract concepts within it, right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
What? Wait,
Yeah,
what?
actually, in fact, I think traditionally abstract things would refer to outside of the universe, outside of space, time, and matter. You correct me though.
Yeah. No, like for like let's say that we have like an X entity within our like universe, right? And they have like to understand some specific abstract concept. If there's like no conceptions within our universe, such as like we don't get to understand things such as light
No
or
contentions?
such
What does
as
that mean?
such as like mathematical mathematical integers and a lot more like things that are deemed as a requirement for knowledge to exist or whatsoever. You get what I mean,
I
Ben?
don't think math is a requirement for knowledge to exist.
um for example, we have like we measure like length or width or whatever. Doesn't that require mathematical things that dictates from linkage of knowledge though?
Well, that's just an example of how we use units to describe distance. But that's not how all knowledge is facilitated. So this wouldn't even be an adequate response. But I'm just asking
I,
for why should I believe in your P2 though?
Yeah, because like I mean, I gave out upon that while the necessary attributes within the eternal I mean not necessary but like the eternal attributes the universe have, which requires the fact
What do
that
you mean by
none of
eternal
these exist.
attributes? Like I don't know what that means.
I mean, the attributes that the universe contains to, not anything external to that which is outside of the
Contains
universe.
to? What does that mean?
I mean, space, time, or other things like gravity, or all of that. That's an attribute eternal to the universe. But I don't know what's like confusing with that thing.
Well, because you're using the word eternal, and like traditionally within any conventional use, not to say you're using this, but under my understanding, eternal just seems to represent something that doesn't have a finite window of existing, something that can always exist, right? And at least that's just one definition of eternal. So when you say that there are eternal facts, presumably you don't believe the universe has always been here, right? I'm just going to assume no. So that's why I'm confused, because when you say eternal facts, it presumes that these facts are true of existence, even if the universe isn't true of existence in all standings and sittings, right? To which I don't even understand. But let's assume that it is though. I don't even understand what you take eternal facts to be. Nor do I even understand how this is informing me of why knowledge is a necessary constitution of the universe. Because seemingly, it seems as though knowledge is just a tool that we use, or just some datum that we can establish that our minds interpret. It doesn't seem as though knowledge is actually a physical constitution of our universe. At least I don't have any reason to believe so. If you have some inference for that, then sure, I'd love to hear it. But
Yeah, okay. So what I mean by internal facts, obviously there are, well, things that are eternally
oh, are you saying
needed for like
internal
the
or
universe.
eternal?
I'm saying internal, not eternal, but I mean, did you like
Oh,
confuse
okay.
that part?
Well,
Yeah,
your
so
accent's like confusing me. Okay, so you said internal facts. What do you mean by that?
I mean, yeah, so like, inside the universe that essentially that these attributes are some form of requirement for said universe to exist in a sense. I mean, if you like would like give the confusion between internal and eternal in a sense. But yes, to basically continue, when I'm gonna say like why it constitutes for like all knowledge essentially is that when I say like there are conceptions or mental ideations that you can like depict within this universal constitution, like there are like structures or things that we need towards that is literally linkage to knowledge that we all utilize. And if knowledge doesn't exist within our universe, that kind of like makes the universe kind of collapse and stuff. Because for example, if we have like knowledge within like this specific thing, and that it can give out some information which is a requirement for an attribute within knowledge, it'll be a contradiction if knowledge did not exist and all of that.
Yeah, wait,
you
well,
know
let's just.
so
First off, I didn't understand most of what you said, but you said it'd be a contradiction. What do you mean by that? Like, in what modal sense?
I mean, so let's say, for example, that you gave out some information to something. I mean, like there are, phenomena within the universe that
No, I'm just
requires the
asking
fact
for
that
your
they're
scope.
giving out like, yeah, like they are giving out essentially informations and whatever, and you can gain those informations, and that is some form of linkage towards knowledge. Now, if knowledge didn't exist, that information would not have any scopes whatsoever that like grants the fact that it will like, conjunct towards the brain or whatever.
Yeah, so I don't really know what that gibberation is, but like, what's the scope you're using to describe the contradiction?
I mean, some form of like what do you mean by scope essentially?
Okay,
That's
so
not
when we talk about like contradictions, like or we talk about things that can exist or can't exist, typically we're going to refer to some modal scope. So, for example, if one were to say that a square circle is contradictory, they probably wouldn't be referring to a gnomic contradiction, even though some people may refer to it. Maybe even not a metaphysical contradiction, but they could refer to a logical contradiction, which is just to say that it contravenes with some law of logic. But if someone were to say that something is metaphysically impossible, it may not contravene with the law of logic. It may actually just mean that this is something that can't exist in any world, right? Not by any logical means, but just by the mere means of reason. To which we'd say that that's like a metaphysical contradiction. Or we'd say something's a physical contradiction, such as going past the speed of light. We'd call that a gnomic contradiction or a physical contradiction, because it's only true within the realms of our universe. So now that I've introduced basic modality and rudimentary concepts, do you have a scope that you're describing contradiction through?
I guess we could consider it as a logical contradiction in a sense if you obviously like for example we have like a square circle or like the identity of x and not x like within this scope of the like said analytical thing or whatever. So like yeah, as I said again, if there are obvious phenomenon that is a requirement for the universe to exist and said phenomenon that gives out information that is within the linkage of knowledge for you to gain said information from your fucking brain or whatever, then I would say that it would be a logical contradiction if knowledge doesn't exist that phenomena that like dish out information will not go upon your brain or whatever. Said information is not gonna gain access to from the mental
I
mind
don't know what you're
if
saying.
fucking like uh well it's just simple like let's say that let's say that we have like y like this other person, right? We have a y person, or like let's say like y goes out, right? And he essentially tries to give some form of like how do I say this? Like, let's say that he shoots eggs
Okay.
or whatever. Like he
I don't
shoots
mean
eggs.
to interrupt to be
So
obnoxious. I'm not trying to speak, but this isn't really helping me. Could you just give like an inference that like knowledge, or actually, I'll just ask you this: do you think that like knowledge can exist without humans?
yeah, do I think knowledge can exist without humans? I guess so, because I mean the logical distinction is that while humans
Okay. What do you think
analytically are
knowledge is?
contingent, um, well, do you want to like go to definitions to for like that?
Well,
It's
you're the
just it's
appraiser.
kind
I
of
just
like
want to understand what you mean.
yeah, it's kind of like some form of linkage towards like things that well conceptions or whatsoever. Like hold on, so
What?
um like knowledge is essentially facts, information, and skills acquired by a person through experience or education, the theoretical practical understanding of a subject. So essentially, for it's like a linkage. Like if you have if you have like a concept or whatever, and then you try to understand said concept, now
This is
there's gonna be a
confusing me
linkage from
more.
the information to your mental mind or whatever. Because the information that goes to your mind, that is a form of knowledge, and that is why knowledge is
Yeah,
linkage towards this
this is
concept, if you can
confusing.
understand.
Yeah, this is confusing me more. I do not understand. So what's the definition of knowledge? Like, what was that? I didn't catch that upon the gibberish.
Bruh, that wasn't really gibberish. I'm sorry if you didn't understand that, but okay, so I'll just keep it
It's
slow
okay.
then. So, yeah, and knowledge is like facts, information, and skills acquired by a person through experience or
Oh,
education.
you're using
And through,
Oxford. Okay, okay. I'm fine with that definition. So, what's the argument that this can exist or pertain without humans?
I mean, knowledge isn't really something that corresponds towards the fact that humans are let's say that they're essentially contingent upon they require some form of being, like they're like so, like they're for example, if there's like a mother and father, right, and stuff. A kid or like a person cannot exist without their mother and father and all that, which means there's a part in time where these people were to exist within our world and stuff. So since they're contingent physically and knowledge isn't physical in a sense, their logical distinction analytically something can exist correspondence towards the fact that knowledge is something like correspondence to knowledge, like conceptions, etc. So yeah, you can obviously see the analytical distinctions between both physically and non-physically or whatever. So yeah.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the duration and the attempted informative definition, but like that isn't going to be adequate. So, I mean, the idea is if you're going to try to make any type of argument or inference, if you're just saying that because people can exist at certain times throughout our universe, and we seem to see dependencies or at least some contingency relations, I'm fine with that. Let's accept that fact. Let's say we have a fact that we observe contingency relationships within our universe. Now, to make the jump from that to say that, well, our minds are immaterial, and since we only actually see physical dependency, there is no argument for mental independency or mental dependency. That's completely fine. Let's say we don't observe this. Let's say that there's no account for some contrary case that minds aren't dependent. Okay, that's fine. So how do we get closer to saying minds are dependent or independent? I mean to say, right? Because if all you're trying to argue here is just that minds are independent, that or not minds but knowledge, I'll say, my bad, that knowledge is independent, and you're trying to make the argument because we don't observe immaterial dependency that knowledge would be dependent upon something. I would say that's simply just an appeal to a last man standing fallacy. I mean, just because like you don't have some hypothesis that attempts to purport some contrary evidence, it doesn't mean your hypothesis is correct. That's just to say that the only available data that you have right now based on your knowledge is this, which is cool. I'm fine with that. But I'm not seeing any reason to believe this hypothesis, though. In fact, I can just postulate and say that I'm actually a knowledge realist, if that's even a thing. Like I'm someone who like doesn't even believe knowledge actually exists in any real way. I could simply just postulate that I'm fine with taking the view or the hypothesis that knowledge is actually something that we just describe as a tool to represent facts about a reality that we understand epistemically. Right? I'm not even
Okay.
of the agreement yet that knowledge seems to be something that's actually represented in our world through any constitution that can be demonstrated independent of our minds. And even let's say if it is dependent on our minds and you're still claiming there's some reality about that, I'm not someone who believes that our knowledge can track actual things about reality in the sense of what knowledge is. In fact, I believe that we have to background assume knowledge in order to postulate and inform things about our reality. We kind of have to assume our knowledge is like correct. I mean, we can obviously test our knowledge in certain instances, but in order to test our knowledge, obviously that would assume furthermore background knowledge and what so. So that's kind of like the list of contentions and inconsistencies. But I mean, do you actually have a
Yeah.
response?
Yeah. So when you said like further background issues or whatever, like what do you mean by that, bro? You can like clarify on that, and then I'll give out my argument. Yeah.
Oh, I
So.
wish I knew what I meant by that either, because I don't recall saying like background errors. I said background knowledge, and all I mean by background
Oh.
knowledge is just
Oh.
knowledge that we have to assume in our background understandings in order to form intelligible sentences and in order to understand the world around us. So it's just assumptions that we have to have in order to derive conclusions.
Oh. So yeah. Okay. Essentially, that it's some form of like some assumption that draws upon the conclusion. Correct.
An assumption that draws upon the. What does that even mean?
I mean, it's what you said. I'm just like
That's not what I
that
said.
specifically. Well, you said like knowledge and then draw and then conclusion. So yeah, like worded that more accurately then. My
Okay,
bad, bro.
so no, it's cool. All I mean by background knowledge is just some data that we have to assume preliminarily in order to furthermore form conclusions that seem to be accurate, or to make inferences about the world that seem to be accurate. It appears that, for example, right, if I'm making the statement, or I'm postulating that the sky is blue, generally there's a level of background understanding that I already have to agree on for us to even make such an assertion, such as that the sky exists, that blue exists, and that there's an equal understanding of the semantic meaning of blue and sky, and that there's an understanding of how language is tied together to form that into a coherent sentence. Like, these are all nearly automatic assumptions that we just make, that we don't even really think about, just to formulate conclusions around us. So that's all I mean by background knowledge, just basic assumptions that we have to do in order to form intelligibility, right?
So essentially, like,
I guess not
well,
form
there,
intelligibility, that's actually a bit inaccurate to say, but to give an intelligible, like, inferences, right? Where we derive that from.
yeah. So okay, so when you like say this specifically, like we make these specific assumptions and not really think about, well, what it is analytically, or what its true value is essentially, but like we're just making an assumption and derive it from the conclusion based upon like what we see, or like what we can like observe essentially, and like draw from that intelligible tangible like conclusion. So as an example being that where we have like a y person, no, let's not say y person, but let's say that the person gives out an information to another person. Obviously we can observe that some form of information that is like gain is some form of knowledge, in the sense that we define as knowledge. I mean, yeah, that's what I defined as knowledge earlier, and you specifically agree with Oxford Dictionary. So yeah, as we know for a fact that if we have like no value specifically, what is like the truth value of this proposition that you just given out or laid out from this table or whatever, um I would say essentially that, as I said again, if we're talking about the universe that we have, like the observations that we have given to the hypothesis of the universe or whatsoever, if there is an if we're gonna say that if we found out that this knowledge or whatever, the thing that we're trying to understand is what is either who either like started the origins of the universe. What is the origin of the universe? Either we have like God or naturalism in a sense. But if we were to say that we have an observation analytically from our universe eternally, we're gonna question what is actually true within, what is the value within this thing. And as I said again, I'll be more propositionally justified or more sufficient if I were to give it to a being that essentially gave out these properties in a sense that we can derive from the proper conclusion. How do these things in like initially like exist? How do these things analytically is true in a sense? Like, the information you gain, which is knowledge that we argue as, then I say that as in via classical theistic properties such as like omnipotence, omniscience or whatever. It's something that is like correlated towards the existence of God in a sense. I think that's gonna explain more of the origins of the universe, and I can consider that as true in a sense based upon the argument I gave, and I think it's gonna be more adequate and more sufficient than, well, the standpoint of like fucking naturalism. So I don't actually even see how this supports your standpoint of like naturalism and stuff, etc. So yeah.
Well, I'm glad you noticed that I wasn't actually affirming anything, because you are the one who made the claim that seemingly there's better reason to believe theism than naturalism. So I'm glad you finally caught up to that, right? And I'm also glad you caught up to the idea that what you're trying to actually prove is that theism serves to be a better explanatory account of the universe than naturalism. Now, you made a few blunders there, and I don't want to be pedantic, and I want to be charitable to your argument, right? Like, you have to first I'm going to make you recognize this. I never agreed that there even is an origin of the universe. I'm not even under the impression that the universe started, right? So that disagreement right there would just shatter everything you just said, because you haven't established this. Unless you have a good inference for this.
Sorry.
Just hang on. Unless you have a good inference. Just hang on for a second. Unless you have a good inference, right? There wouldn't be any establishment of this. But I can even be charitable to your position. I can even agree to the fact that there is an origin of the universe and that there is a start of the universe. This still wouldn't even get to your conclusion, because seemingly there's singularities in other models that are described by naturalistic and human phenomenon, right? And seemingly point to an origin of the universe that can facilitate all the natural phenomenon and all of the facts of the universe that we established here today. And I can provide a plethora of evidence that actually supports this. And seemingly all of this evidence doesn't postulate that there has to be some metaphysical and material being that created it, that's necessary, that's divine, or anything of the like. So it's not the case that my stance fails inadequately. Because presumably, if we both agree on the naturalistic facts of the world, the naturalistic powers of the world, and the naturalistic causal powers of the world, then seemingly we'd agree on everything except for the fact that you postulate there's an extra God. So that isn't even the case. But seemingly there may be some discrepancy within our natural facts that we agree on, because I'm not really sure how educated you are in physics or whatever that much. But I'm not really that much either, so we don't even have to get into that, right? I could just provide you an explanatory account for why natural human sciences and natural sciences obviously provide an explanatory account for the universe, right? But yeah, like, I just want to make that clear though. Like, You can't just postulate randomly that there's an origin to the universe and expect that to fly. But I'll grant you that. I still don't even think you've adequately provided some sufficiency to your argument. Also, I'm not even really concerned by this use of analytics. I don't know what you're talking about here, because we're trying to describe something synthetic, right? If you're going to say something's true by definition, that's not really of interest. So I'm not really sure what you mean by analytic there, why you keep jabbing that in, but yeah, that's all I have to say to that.
Okay, so yeah, so when we like talk about the origins of the universe in a sense, I mean that's kind of like different how we like say this. But if you're gonna say that if there is like no start within the universe and stuff, I mean I would still say that that is like some form of correlation towards, well, it is gonna be some form of like let's say that is like wrong and stuff. Like I would say it's a contradiction based upon the inference rule I were to give out. Like if we say that the universe has like no start, then essentially all these properties which I deem as something that is like a requirement for constitutes of X, essentially the property Y, and it requires some sufficient explained phenomenon in the sense that, well, Y is like how do I say this, dependent on X. And since I would say that like P3 universe R requires property Y for it to exist as a whole, and the property Y requires X to exist. I basically say that, well, that's gonna be a contradiction on the infinite causality thing, or like the universe be like existing as a sense that there is no beginning or whatever, etc., etc. But now to essentially like debunk all that thing when you said like it's more holding towards the natural account that, well, all these things like naturalistic power or naturalistic knowledge, it would deem for the fact that it's going to be more explained, more sufficient, because, well, it doesn't require more evidence for like an atemporal aspatial phenomenon, or a being that is metaphysical, external towards our universe, or like a divine creator, etc., etc. But I were to say that, well, how do I say this? Like, so the thing with naturalism or whatsoever is just that claiming that essentially all of these just naturally exist in a sense, I would deem that as something non-sufficient. It's not going to be sufficient or adequate towards the fact that, well, okay, this is going to be what is true in a sense. Well, this is what actually is the origins of the universe. This is what happens in actuality of the universe, etc., etc. But even if you're gonna claim all of that, which again deem as the fact that if this universe exists and this balance, the fact that there's physical things that are conceptions or etc., etc., that as I said again, balance the universe. I would say, as I said again, that naturalistic, it does not hold the scope or the fact that we like validity, or like the fact that we have like to support this scope in a sense. It's not adequate in a sense. It's not sufficient. So yeah, I would be more self-sufficient in the sense that if we were to say that if there is a divine creator external to our universe and has the attributes that actually balance out the universe, other than the fact that we were to say a naturalistic account, that if the universe were there's a time to begin to exist, you can deem that as like a conjunction towards like root contingency or etc., etc., just exists naturally.
I'm not
So
sure what you're
obviously, yeah,
saying.
you can clear like the analytical distinctions between both. So yeah, I'm just saying that essentially my position is just going to be sufficient enough, more self-sufficient than the fact that your position holding the naturalistic account, etc., etc. So I'm sorry if I were like studying a lot. My bad, bro. So
It's not even
yeah,
the stutters. I just don't understand what you're saying, like at all. Like, I mean, even if we take it to be the case that, for whatever reason, theism also had an explanatory account that was completely consistent and wasn't inconsistent with the world. Typically, we would say that the theism account and the naturalist account agree on the natural facts of the world. Like, are you confused on that? Because it seems to me like you were trying to say that naturalism actually doesn't accurately describe the naturalistic properties of the world. But what do you think naturalism actually? What do you take naturalism to be? Because I mean, if you're just saying by that our natural sciences and our human sciences haven't given us an exponentially more accurate view of the world over time of ages, I can easily go into argument for that. But surely you wouldn't be making such a commitment to that. Like, presumably you understand why naturalism accounts for natural facts of the world, right? Like, I misheard you on that.
okay, so yeah, so let's just agree upon naturalism is like, let's like agree on like its
What?
definition or whatever. So no, I'm
Okay.
not saying that I agree with your position. There's like a difference there. So hold up.
Okay.
Let me just let me just like get to the meaning of naturalism. Then hold up. So a style. It's like a style theory or representation based on the accurate depiction. And what
So
the fuck?
naturalism is just the
No, this
view
is wrong.
that.
This is wrong. This is wrong. Yeah, hold on.
Well, I'm the
Yeah, you
appraiser when
continue.
it
You
comes
continue.
to naturalism. Yeah, yeah. I was just gonna clarify. Like, to me, when all naturalism means is just that the natural laws and the natural forces that operate within our universe is all there is. Like, I don't take it that there's a supernatural explanation for the universe. That's all I'm saying. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's all
So
naturalism is saying.
yeah, essentially. So let me just ask you this question. let's say that an apple exists out of nowhere or just pop out of or like out of nowhere. Do you think that something like that is like possible in a sense? I mean, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what do you mean? Well, what do you mean when you say possible?
Like it can happen or whatsoever. Like it just randomly out of nowhere it
No, I
popped
know what
out
you
of
mean by
reality.
that.
Popped in reality.
I'm asking what scope you're talking about. Remember our modal scopes that we talked about earlier?
Yeah. So wait, what you say, bro? Model scopes. Yeah. Like
First off, seemed Graham Oppie, which is one of the main proponents for naturalism, actually hates the infinite regression. So that's just a lie. What you just typed in chat. I just want to make that known. But what was that?
Okay, so Archie, let's just continue the debate, right? Actually, I should like just continue on my point. Essentially, let's just like we'll continue on that later. So as I said again, well, if naturalists they close the account that well we have these things such as like all knowledge or all power, not, you can deem as a something that is components of naturalism and all that. Which I would say again, if there is nothing in the universe, if we say let's presuppose of the fact that the given hypothesis is that out of nowhere the universe just existed out of nowhere, just popped out of nowhere. So essentially there was nothing in a sense, and then there's gonna be something that's creation afterwards. So if we were to say that existence wise came out of nothing, and if you're gonna hold the fact it's naturally the case, right, which gives out the balance within the universe, I would say logically speaking that is not sufficient in a sense. The given hypothesis doesn't literally just support the entire
I
conclusion
don't
that
believe
it's
the
trying to
universe
give out,
popped out
bro.
of nowhere.
What do you? Okay, so let me just give you this. What possibility do you deem the fact that naturalism creates that universe essentially? Like what possibility? What possible scope? What
Give me a
happened?
second.
Yeah, sure, it's fine. So like for example, like if he's like trying to go walk away for a sense, I'll just like make my point clear. Like you know how like if he holds the fact that a naturalistic account that if the God doesn't exist or you know
Okay, I'm back.
these
What were you saying?
whatever. Yeah, so if you hold the account that well you like you know naturalism or whatever you like
Were you just
hold that
asking me
position
if
to
what
be.
naturalist accounts explain the universe, like the origins of the universe?
Oh yeah, so how yeah the
Yeah.
origins of the
So,
universe is.
are you familiar with what a singularity is?
No, sorry, my bad. You can like explain me on that one. What is a singularity then?
So, a singularity is just, I guess we can describe it as like an infinite density point in space and time, um, where presumably our math kind of fails, but we kind of think of a singularity to be an extension in space and time, where hypothetically there can be matter that is created, distorted, or transferred through these singularities. And there's a very popular model of the cosmological inflationary model of the universe, which is just the most popular model, obviously the one you typically see when you look at the Big Bang, where it starts with the hot dense period of the origin of the universe and it goes into the expansion model. But on track, right? The idea is there's a postulation or there's a hypothesis to where there's a singularity that actually was the origin of the universe and that this happened to be the initial point where everything kind of began out of nowhere. Now, how this point formulated, how this point even got there, we don't know. Like presumably under this model, it's just the point has just always been there. I guess we can analogously attribute this to God in a similar sense, how he's just apparently always been there in theism. But yeah, under the naturalist account, we would just say the singularity could account for that. Do you have any like? Do you think this is like nomically inconsistent or like inconsistent in any kind of scope?
I get. Yeah, sure. I guess I could consider that inconsistent in a sense. So let me just ask you this: Do you think that the well, everything basically exists within the universe, correct?
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, everything that basically exists is within the universe that
I
we
don't know
basically
that.
observe so far, such as
Yeah,
like
I don't know that.
oh you don't know okay so um what I deem as well the universe contains all these properties as like you know all knowledge and existence wise or whatever external to that I deem as something non-existential in a sense so if like the
You think
universe
God
was
doesn't
like
exist?
well no not different from God like outside of the universal scope I would deem God as metaphysical in a sense he's external completely in a sense that
What does that
extrinsically
mean?
he has like no correlation to outside of like the edges of the universe.
Wait, hey
It's like
God, I'm
saying
not
that
sure. Wait, hang
it's
on.
like
Wait, what do you
it's
mean?
like saying wait yeah hold on let me just give an analogy. It's like saying that we have a box, right? I mean we put a box within a table. I can say that within that table I would say that outside of the box, which I would put some items within, outside of that box, and within that table, there is nothing within that table. But external to that specific table, logically, which is distinct from the edges of the box, I could deem that as existential in a sense. And
Are
it's
you claiming
metaphysical
that there's
it's
some
that, yeah.
outer layer of the universe which is just non-existent, but beyond that layer, that's where God lies? That's like your accurate model, and you think you're going to be able to give an inference to support this? Like you confidently believe that?
God, no, not in the sense that God doesn't lie within that plane specifically
You
external to
said
the
he doesn't
universe.
exist there. You said it's metaphysically what's it called? Distinct from
I,
it.
I'm claiming that God. Well, yeah, I'm claiming essentially that God doesn't like lie there in a sense. Like, I mean, outside of the universal scope,
Okay.
outside of the edges of the universe.
Let's just get past like the gibberish. So listen, I gave an account, right, of the universe, a singularity that could accurately explain it, right? I asked you if there's any inconsistency. You told me yes, but I haven't really been informed of it, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, my bad, bro. So yeah, so essentially you just gave out this phenomenon relational to physics in a sense that well these some form of like matter or like where expansions of space time or that the start of Big Bang and that it creates the universe, etc., etc. That's your like what your argument is essentially, right?
So no, you made the
That no,
claim, a very
essentially
very
yeah,
bold claim.
yeah, I
Yeah, I said
did,
no.
and yeah, I
You
did,
don't
but
even
I'm
know
gonna go
what
ahead and
claim am I
explain now.
referring to? What claim am I referring to?
You argued upon singularity in a sense and
I
how this
asked what
could
claim
be.
are you referring to? Because I just made the statement. You made a claim and you said yeah, and then you cut me off. Presumably, you know what I'm gonna say, right? So what is it?
What do you mean by what claim did you like refer to or something?
Wait, but you interrupted me, so you had a response already. Like you know what I'm gonna say, right?
No, I'm sorry. Like, if I were to say that, well, yeah, in the
No,
sense that I probably like give like, bro, can you like stop over talking me? I
but
probably
you
like
just
understand in the
overtalked
sense
me.
that you,
Where's the issue?
well, not in the sense I'm like trying to say understand thing
It's
in a
cool
way.
for
I'm
you.
not. No, bro. Like, I'm saying that. Okay, hold
Are
on.
you saying you're cutting
Let's.
me off to clarify? Because that's the only virtuous reason why you'd cut me off. That's cool. Are you just clarifying?
I guess so, but after you
What are
done
you
speaking, I
clarifying?
speak. Wait, listen. After you finish speaking, I speak, and then you was like spoken again, like afterwards.
But well, that's a lie, right? I was speaking, and then in the middle, I was explaining why the claim you made, to which I was about to further elaborate upon, was inconsistent and why you haven't informed us of it. And then you cut me off to say, yeah, the claim I made. To which I asked you, what claim did you make, and you still haven't informed us.
No, like listen, you okay? So I said yeah, and then you gave a, and then you were like continue speaking and stuff, and then you asked me, "Are you boldly confident of this? Whatever, what, etc., etc." And then like
That's a false
you
account.
stopped speaking there, and then I thought it was my turn to speak, and then you interrupted me. So I
Well,
don't
that's
think
a
that's
false
gonna matter,
account.
anyways. I don't think that's gonna. I
Listen,
don't think it's gonna
I'm
be
not. Listen,
relevant, to be
it's
honest with
fine.
you.
I don't. Listen, it's fine. I don't even care to do the meta ramble. All I was saying before you interrupted me was just this: if you're making a claim that naturalists seem to not have an adequate account of the origins of the universe, to which I even granted to you to be generous and charitable to you, because I don't have to agree to that, right? Let's assume that there is an origin. I gave the example of the singularity hypothesis. You told me that there is some inconsistency with this, whether that's nomically, metaphysically, whatever have it. I asked you for what the inconsistency is. Could you elucidate that for us? Because I'm still not understanding.
Okay, finally. So yeah, sorry if I wasn't able to elucidate on that, but essentially these things that you say as a singularity, where the origins of the universe, how it started, how can you consider the fact that all these properties in the sense like knowledge or something that the mind or etc. or powers in a sense, how do you explain that this was a
Yo,
singularity give out? Yo, stop. Yo, Lane, stop
yo,
that. Lane, stop that.
Listen, you don't have to loud mic. It's okay. You don't have to loud mic. It's okay. No,
Lane,
Seemed you don't have to loud mic. No, Seemed you don't have to loud mic for attention. Yeah, Seemed you
bro,
don't have to loud mic for attention. You're good, I promise. Continue.
bro. Okay, my bad. I thought it was Lane stuff. I'm sorry,
Yeah, no,
but
it was just
yeah,
Seemed crying for attention. You're
yeah,
good. He
yeah.
does that
So
sometimes.
yeah, so as I said again, why the reason why it's not adequate is no, or not, or it's not sufficient in a sense to explain the phenomenon of how the start of the universe essentially. Um, well, how do you explain specifically how the specific singularity brings about the properties of
That's
knowledge
just a
or things
question.
that power, etc.?
Yeah, that's just a
Well,
question. I asked for
well,
what's the
yeah, but
inconsistency.
yeah, but I'm saying that
Yeah.
mostly why that is considered as inconsistency. I'm conjunctioning to my mind or like my argument. I'm saying that logically speaking,
Conjunctioning?
the yeah, conjunctioning to the point I'm trying to make. If you're like, for example, if you ask a question to someone,
Do you
essentially
take a
you're gonna
conjunction
you
means connection?
yeah,
Or like
I could,
connecting?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A conjunction is
yeah,
just an and operator. Like a disjunction is also a connection, but you win it. Say you're disjuncting something, right? I'm just clarifying. It's cool. It doesn't matter. You're just good.
yeah. My bad, bro. But I could yeah, so I'll just say connection in this case, connection instead of conjunction. It doesn't really matter what semantics I use.
I was
So like
being
it's
I was
much
being
better.
pedantic. Just go.
Yeah, so essentially I'm gonna, yeah, as I said again, well, yes. Okay, so yeah, well, the reason why I deem it as inconsistent, and if I ask you something which is trying to relate or analytically connects with what I, or my viewpoint, if you say that there is a singularity which deem as like the existence of the universe without a divine creator,
I didn't say there
essentially
was
like
one.
these, there are like phenomenons essentially that ripples throughout, and then it just started the big bang, etc., etc. I'm gonna ask you this: what attributes that I like laid out, such as knowledge or all of these things, why this specific singularity explain this? And I'm gonna say this is the reason why it deems as inconsistent, is because there is no logical correlation to that. However, by my deistic account that I hold, it has connect correlation to the attributes essentially correspondence to the eternal universe, and external to that is the extrinsic God essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that. Like again, like I just keep hearing gibberations. I mean, the idea is I never even made the claim that it was just random ripples, right? That's just like a terrible mischaracterization of what I'm saying. A
I
singularity,
mean,
as I
doesn't
mentioned, is
matter.
just a mathematical. It does matter because you're trying to account for my argument and explain why it's inconsistent. It matters very gravely.
Mm,
Because the idea is, if I'm saying that
yeah,
it's
I
just a
don't think it
singularity
matter.
of a specific point, that's cool. If you're saying that it's just a singularity of a specific point, and you're saying that the specific point is something that's inconsistent because it fails to give an explanatory account of how we actually got here, I gave the explanatory account of how we actually got here. In fact, this can be described through cosmological inflationary models that also describe how we got here. Not necessarily how we got here in the sense of our origins, which the singularity would describe that, but the Big Bang cosmological model explains to how we extend and how we actually formed into conscientious minds, how our atoms formed together to even develop our structures of the universe, and how all these things go. There are many naturalistic accounts, and I can go over hundreds of thousands of them that account for this. So that can't possibly be the critique, right? To which, if you're just saying that it's inconsistent in the sense to where there's some phenomenon that it doesn't match with, or if you're saying it's inconsistent, to which I also heard you say, because I haven't answered your question, well, that would just be an argument from incredulity. Because let's say that I can't epistemically account for the fact of the hypothesis. What's that to say that you are actually correct in your hypothesis, right? I mean, the goal here, and at least the claim that you initially made, was that a theist would have better reason to account for or I guess that the theistic position provides a better explanatory account that accommodates for the facts of the world, and that just accommodates for the facts of the world and can corroborate with some factive explanation of how we got here. But I'm saying this naturalistic account also can, and I posited, right, to which you asked me, how do we account for the origin, to which I told you singularity could account for the origin. I haven't heard an inconsistency that's gnomic, right? To which all I mean by a gnomic inconsistency is some fact of the world that is true of the world we know it now that cannot be true if it is the case that we came from a singularity. You haven't described that to me. You've just said that you don't understand what the explanatory account is, therefore it's inconsistent. But that's not what inconsistency is. Because let's say that you actually don't have this epistemic access. Let's say I don't have this epistemic access of the explanatory account at all. That doesn't mean that it's not explanatory, right? That just means we don't understand how it's explanatory. These facts haven't been revealed to us, right? So this also wouldn't even be a meaningful argument. But that's just being charitable. The reality is I actually did explain this what's called account already, and you just haven't really addressed it. So I'm going to ask you not to be incredulous. I'm going to ask you to actually address the argument. I'm going to have to explain the inconsistency. And, if you don't, then we could just really move on, I guess. But, yeah.
So it's my turn to argue now. Yeah, to give out why essentially that all the things that you kind of say didn't really like affected anything whatsoever, or is like you just say that we have no explanatory thing that we like don't understand specifically all these things, etc., etc. And you can say that it holds the fact that the attributes is correlation towards naturalism or whatsoever, but yeah, given to the analytics as
What
laid
does
out
that
again,
mean? Like
obviously
like correlative attributes to naturalism? Like I don't understand these words.
you said that if like you said that if all of these properties within the universe is like correspondence to theism, you could also give out an argument for naturalism as well. Essentially, you're saying that the universe began to exist, and you can deem it as the conclusion that the start of the hypothesis to be true is naturalism.
That's not what I'm saying. So if that's what I was saying, then
What
I'd be
you're
having
saying, that's
to.
what your
Well, that's
correlation.
wrong because if I was saying that, then I'd be also saying that theism is inconsistent with the world. But I very specifically and clearly said I'm fine with theism being consistent with the world because I'm not claiming it's inconsistent. I just think that there are hypotheses that provide even an equal footing of explanatory power that the theism hypothesis provides, or an even better footing than or an even better account of the explanatory power that the theism
So
hypothesis
e-
provides. I made this very specific,
exactly,
right? Because well,
exactly.
no, because you made the initial claim that theism has better reason. Actually, initially you made the claim that it actually has better justification. And then I later clarified and I asked, by better justification, do you just mean better reason? And he said yes. And presumably all you mean by better reason is just some facts or inferences that motivate us to the conclusion that theism is true, based on the fact that it can corroborate with the facts of reality and it accommodates with the facts of reality. To which presumably, if you're saying that it has better reason, you're saying that it better accounts for reality and that it better accommodates for reality. So if you're just saying that, right, to which I asked you what facts does it better explain, you haven't actually gave this reason. You've just asked me, well, what facts does naturalism explain? To which I already actually gave you a model that perfectly explains it. And I don't mean to be rude, but it just seems as if you're not actually informing us of what's inconsistent about it. In fact, it just appears that you're saying because you don't know that it can't possibly be the case. But as I already mentioned previously, this is just an appeal to incredulity, and this isn't actually going to do anything for the motivational power of your argument or your hypothesis. So I'll ask you one more time, and if not, then we can just conclude if you don't feel like it's getting anywhere.
Okay, so yeah, finally I can speak. You're not gonna overtalk me this time, okay? All right, so I'll just give out essentially everything that is laid out in the table, and I'm just gonna explain every argument essentially. First of all, when you said that essentially, you're not saying that theism is inconsistent in a sense. You're trying to defend that. You're not saying that you're trying to defend naturalism. You're just saying that both these hypotheses has equal explanatory power in the sense that if naturalism essentially has equal explanation to theism, why should we deem in theism as true in a sense? That's like what you're trying to hold as a position, and that is why it's trying to oppose specifically my position, which claims that it's more justified that my position, that is theism, is more like more sufficient than fucking naturalism, etc., etc. So yeah, I'm not saying essentially that you're going against theism in a sense. I'm not saying that. That's why I gave out the argument that if you hold the fact that both of these things hold the same reason, or hold the fact that chronologically they hold the same attributes, that deems the fact that if the universe existed because of said attributes given laid out from the table from both specific thing, which is naturalism and theism in a sense. So yeah, given the analytics, it's my turn to argue now. It's time to go upon like further explanation as to why essentially why naturalism doesn't support the existence of the universe whatsoever. So as I said again, given out, if you're gonna say the singularity which created the universe in a sense, essentially you can deem that as some form of naturalistic account. And specifically, as I asked, right, the reason why I deem as inconsistent, because if we have things completely that balance the universe that isn't physically correlated to singularities, etc., such as knowledge or other phenomenons within our universe, has no correlation towards something that is singular, that the correlation to dimensional thing that expands the universe, molecules, etc. So I gave out logically, analytically, if these things, the attributes eternal to the universe, obviously distinct from how you deem it as the origins of the universe, I could say that's going to be inconsistent in a sense. That's not going to be sufficient. Now, for the theistic account, as I hold, again, if the universe that has all these properties, the same way as I could deem as a classical theistic God that holds all these properties, such as all knowledge and all power, I could consider the fact the origins of the universe correspondence towards the God in a sense, the divine creator, because these divine creator in this case holds those account. I would say, yeah, that's sufficient enough for the fact that if the universe contains all these properties, and yeah, God also contains all these properties, and if there is no God and this said universe existed out of nowhere without correlation towards like a God in a sense, there is no explanatory power. How said things such as knowledge or all of these things that contains or like the essential properties of the universe. First of all, second of all, given out to the arguments earlier, I also said that the universe relies on its essential properties to exist, meaning it relies on all of those things I laid out from P1 or like P2 or whatever. I don't really remember that much from the chronologically, but given out to the fact that, well, if it's an essential property, right, without it, there is paradoxes within our universe. There is no phenomenons that can be explained. There's no information given out that we get from essentially trying to understand or comprehend or conceive all these things logically speaking. So analytically, right, to the things that what your correspondence is logically distinct from the fact that all these properties I can consider as what makes the universe essentially, then my inference rule would be valid in a sense. My syllogism would be more sufficient than your naturalistic account, the thing that you're trying to hold, the thing that you're trying to like support or whatever. Like, I mean, I would say not in the sense that you're denying theism. I'm saying that you're like more leaning towards this because it has like more explanatory power from the given hypothesis. But the synthesis from both proposition I deem as sufficient from your proposition. My proposition, which I could still consider as sufficient or like sufficient in a sense, it'd be more justified. After that, afterwards, I think I gave out my arguments. I think we could like conclude now. It's fine with me. You can conclude, bro.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done. We can conclude.
Gotcha. So none of that was a real response. I am defending naturalism. You said that a singularity has no correlative power to the facts or to the explain the facts of the universe. I'm not even sure what that means. If you're just saying that I haven't explained the gap between a singularity existing and our explanatory facts existing, I already bridged that with our cosmological inflationary models, as I described, and I even offered to provide an account of evidence for such, to which I'll just send in chat promptly after I'm done. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. The rest of what you said was quite gibberish. It was just you reiterating claims and contradicting yourself over and over. If you want to go to conclusions, that's fine. I just don't think it's necessary. I think we can just end this.
Okay, so yeah, so I guess you didn't really refute all the things I said. I mean that's fine, bro.
There was nothing to refute. That's why.
First, yeah,